You should have your drawing, or if you're gonna freehand just sort of block in with your paint, that's fine too. The first thing I like to do is go ahead and get some dark color on my canvas. And generally I do that using a paint knife. Now, I'm just sort of blocking in some dark colors. I don't want too much black, but just enough to make it interesting. And towards the end of this painting, you'll see why I did this. So let me show you. I've loaded up some black paint on a paper plate. I've got a palette knife. Let me show you how to load that knife. So I want to talk about the painting knife or palette knife. We generally use it for mixing. I use it a lot for my paintings. I like the way they make lines. It's not difficult to use. It can be a challenge from time to time, depending on what paint you're using and what you're painting it on. So you have to work with it. I'm not going to get into a big discussion on various lines and shapes, techniques that you can use with the knife. But for today's canvas, all I really want to do is load it. I'm going to push up against. I'm going to pull back a little bit, push up, and drag it out. And you can see I have this neat little line. Let me do it again. So you want to make sure there's paint on the bottom. You can also pull out. You'll see me doing that a lot. I just really like the knife. It's flexible, it bends. So you can see me making the curves. So I have plenty of paint on this knife. I want to start with something somewhat easier. I'm going to go ahead and draw some of these lines. Now, I don't care if it's broke up. Remember, I just want some dark color on my palette. So keep that paint fresh. You'll use a good bit of it, but don't overpaint it. Just enough to give an idea. So I'm just gonna start blocking it in with my knife. Okay, there you go. Now, you could see I didn't trace everything with the black paint. I just wanted enough to give it a little bit of a pop. So now what I want to do is grab my brush, and now I'm going to sort of block in my background with some interesting colors. Okay, so now I'm getting ready to do my background. You can see I have 3 colors. I have a blue, dark blue, gray, and a white. Those are nice, essential for sort of mixing. You want to wet your brush, get your brush wet. Use a napkin, sort of wipe some of that excess water off. Now remember, this is just a background. This is an abstract flower painting, so you don't want to paint every corner and every little edge. You just keep it loose. We'll work it layer by layer. You can always go back and add some or even remove some with the white paint. So I'm going to get started. So for right now, I'm going to start by dipping my brush one corner into the white, and then I'm going to get a little bit of the dark blue, and then I'm just going to start crossing or hatching. You can see just sort of some random strokes. You don't, again, remember that this is an abstract, so I'm going to get some more white. Don't overblend it. Keep it simple. Remember, there are shadows. Again, we can go back and work it. I'm going to cross hatch it. I'm going to add a little gray, which means I'm going to go in a different direction just for the sense of keeping it interesting. I want to add those a little more gray. Not too much, but just keep playing with it. Just keep mixing. Don't over mix. Again, remember that this is just an interesting background that we are creating. You'll end up going back over it with various layers and even some different colors. Now, you don't have to use my blue and my gray. You can use whatever color you want. Okay, so that's pretty much my first layer background. You can see that it is there's not complete coverage, and that's the way I like it. I like it loose. I want some of that white to come through, and again, as you continue to paint your canvas, you'll go back through cross hatch or start hatching and going directional lines. You'll go back over that again. So now what we want to do is start blocking in with our color. Don't forget your vase. Now, don't go too heavy on this because we have some other things going on in that vase. So I'm going to take just a little bit of blue and probably 3/4 of it, a big chunk of white. And I'm, again, going to keep it loose and just go in a one direction pattern just to break it up a little bit. Keep it loose, but keep it in one direction because it is a vase. and we do want it somewhat to resemble maybe some water. But it is abstract and it is your painting, so whatever you like. Now don't overblend it, keep it loose. Some of that black paint may still be dry. I know mine is. All right, so just getting some color on there. That looks good. So, okay, let's talk about the leaves. Again, I'm just gonna double load the brush. Keep it angled, just like I did with the leaves. I'm going to offload it. Back and forth several times. Again, until I feel like the brush is full. I'm using a big brush for demonstration, but on the canvas, I'll be using a much smaller brush. It depends on the size of leaf. And all I do is put one of the edges down, press, and pull and let up. That's all I do. I mean, I'm not looking for much here. Just a little creativity. I can angle. That's all I'm looking for. So now I want to go ahead and paint the greenery. Now, I'm not gonna start calling out these leaves by name because remember, this is abstract. So it's more about shape, giving this painting some different shapes. So basically, I just start blocking in with two greens. I have a dark green, I have a light green. When I'm doing leaves, sometimes I tend to just double load both corners. You guys have seen me do this before, just to get some different color in it, and it's not so flat. So again, remember, you just want to come in and start blocking. We're not looking for perfection. So let me just start up here. And you can see I just want to keep dipping. You guys may have different methods for doing this. I don't have anything particular for this painting. I'm not looking for something that's an exact replica of a leaf. Right now I'm just blocking. I just want to, and I want to keep it loose. I want to keep this abstract. Okay, now I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna do the stems in my vase. I'm gonna use a paint knife. I'm gonna use the same greens. I'm not gonna worry about mixing them. I'm just going to just get some green on those veins. Not too many. Not too many stems. There are a few leaves in there. Just enough water to make it, or enough color rather, to make it interesting. Okay, so we have enough green. I think you may want to go back over it with a second layer, but remember, right now we're just sort of blocking in some color. So now we want to discuss the roses and the peonies. I would like to use pinks, oranges, and reds for right now to just sort of block those colors in. So I wanted to talk a moment about how I get the paint onto the canvas. A lot of you already know how to double load your brush. That is the technique I learned, of course, from Donna Dewberry and her beautiful flowers. So let's talk a little bit about that. All I'm going to do is I'm going to double load my brush. I'm going to dip a corner of the brush into the first color. Make sure it's angled, and then I'm going to repeat on the other side, make sure it's angled. Now I'm going to offload these colors. I'm going to bring it down, back and forth a couple of times, and then I'm going to double dip again because I really want to fill the brush with that paint. So I'm going to keep going. I'll go again couple of times till I feel like that brush is fully loaded, and just keep going back and forth. This is what we're loading up the bristles and offloading, and then of course you can see we've got paint. Whatever angle you choose, you can see how pretty that is. Different directions. You'll see me painting that way with the flowers. Okay, so the colors, let me see if I can get this up there where you could see them. Here is my palette. You can see I've got orange, gold, and sort of a buttermilk yellow. You can create your own colors, always adding white or grays to change the values of your colors. I don't want to use too many primary colors or bright colors. Always make sure you have a little bit of white to mix. Don't over mix your paints. Remember, we're at this point, we're just blocking in. So I'm going to get started with the orange and the gold and just sort of block it in and see what I like. And again, I'm going to double dip both of the corners of my brush. I'm going to offload it just a little bit. And then, I'm just going to start working it in, but I'm not going to overwork it because, again, this is sort of an abstract, expressional flower painting. It is what you make it. Okay, remember we're just blocking in, so that is my first layer, and it's okay. I'm not gonna start getting, you know, all freaked out. Remember, it's blocking it in. Now I want to do the same thing with my roses. So I want to do some pink and maybe some rose color red. I'm going to offload it. And on the left-hand rose, I think I want to add maybe some plum and some pink. Let's see how that looks. Okay, so now I want to put the little peony bulbs, I guess is what you would call it. I'm just going to do some orange, and I'm just going to be creative and use the bottom of my brush. Remember, we're just getting some color on there. Now I want to go back with the same brush using the same technique and maybe dip it into some yellow or even a white if you would like. I'm using buttermilk, and I just want to add just a little bit to the, not a lot, just enough to maybe make it interesting. And then maybe you go back with some red. Just be creative. Just get some shapes in there. So now I want to add a variety of color, but I want to continue to use the colors that are already on my canvas. So I'm going to use the blue, the white, the pink, and if you've got purple, that's great, or plum. I'm going to use those three colors and just start putting some dots up here. I think, I don't know what kind of leaves or flowers or petals that would be. I just think it's interesting textures and colors. So I'm just, again, using my brush, the bottom of the brush, just to get throwing some color up there. Don't overblend it. Okay, so we've blocked in some color. I think now is a good time to sort of step back, look at it, take your eyes off of it for a few seconds, let it dry, and then let's come back to it with a fresh eye and work in some more layers and give it a little more definition. So I wanted to come back as it starts drying. You get a better look at it, and you can see how much of the canvas is coming through, or maybe it's not coming through enough. Maybe you didn't like the shade or the hue of the color in your background. This is a good time to start playing around with it. It should be dry by now. So I went back through with a little more white and just sort of pulled it through, got my brush wet. I didn't want to over blend it. And I used the brush that I used with the flowers, and you can see some of the oranges coming through, and I really like that. Don't let your brush get too dry, because then the paint doesn't adhere, and you can see where it starts to get blotchy and the canvas is coming through. So I just put a little more water on my brush. I added a little more darker blue for some shadows. Don't get carried away. And then something I wanted to show you, because I liked some of that red coming through, but not a lot. So I'm going to take my painting knife again, and I'm going to use some of that rose red that we used on those roses. And I'm going to create an interesting line down here by the vase, and just keep it interesting and just sort of skip it across. Don't want it too straight. I don't want it too deliberate. So I'm just going to bring it across, and that's good for me right there. You could probably come through a little bit more, pull some up, or you could even pull some down. Whatever you like. Just sort of experiment with it. Remember, if you don't like it, to use a wet paper towel and just wipe it off while it's still wet. Acrylic is very forgiving. So I'm going to work around these layers for a little bit, see what we can come up with. So I added a little bit of the rose red to my vase because I wanted a little bit of the reflection onto the glass. Not too much, don't overdo it. Just enough, again, to make it interesting. So now I'm going to go back, keep adding layers till I get that brilliant color. Fill in some gaps, maybe put a few more leaves.
I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. I certainly enjoyed creating it. The camera angles were a bit challenging. I'm not used to doing my own photography on the art projects, so forgive me. I promise I'll do better next time. Um, Send me your pics. I am anxious to see what you've created. You can find me on Brush Addict on Facebook. You can also find me at the Trustful Library. I'm going to take some black paint, water it down. It should be about the consistency of ink. I'm going to dip my toothbrush into that paint and then take my thumb and sort of scrub it across the bristles, and it should give me a nice clean splatter.